Comedy, a genre I usually don't go searching for. I love a good laugh as much as the next guy, but personally I prefer more serious storytelling rather than just comedy. However, the greatest estate developer somehow manages to be both. Not only is it comedy all the way through, it also manages to add more serious elements to it throughout the entirety of the story. From quite literally knee slapping comedy to peak male friendship and even a bit of romance. If you're coming here as someone who has yet to read manhwa, this is truly a great starting point. And if you have heard of it, but you just haven't checked it out yet, I assure you its popularity is deserved. As usual, let's get straight into it. There might not be a more oversaturated genre than isekai. Every anime season, you see countless ones with maybe one unique gimmick that gets old after the first couple episodes. And manhwa also has a very similar trend of isekai. Though the route that usually takes is you get transported to a novel that you've read in the past, and you very quickly realize that you're a character who wasn't that important or was a villain and ends up dying eventually. So that's the setting for a lot of those, and the Greatest State Developer has that setting as well. So it's it's pretty standard at first, and the first few chapters aren't really going to do anything to hook you instantly because it is the standard, oh, I need to find out a way to survive, and I have knowledge that these people don't that I can use to better my life in this world. And Kim Suho, who becomes Lloyd Frontera, who dies of alcohol poisoning and was like son of a countryside noble, town drunk, the whole shebang. I'm sure you've seen something adjacent to it before. Um, anyway, Kim Suho becomes Lloyd Frontera in a novel that he read. His only relevance to the novel that Kim Suho read was the fact that his bodyguard, Javier, was the main character. And yeah, that's just a very standard setting. It's nothing special. He has a system window that talks to him. He can see people's like pretty much affection for him, or at least their like favorability, and he can get reputation points every time that goes up, which is difficult at first because he was the town drunk and worthless noble who bossed everyone around in a perpetually drunken state and threw tantrums. So the way he goes about implementing um, his ideas at first is he just threatens people pretty much. And it's honestly when he starts threatening people that the story kind of takes on its own identity because the way he goes about it, the way he like coaxes people into things and forces them to like sign contracts that either are directly a scam or sound like a scam until he gets the job done is just very that's like most of the comedy is just him threatening people with a menacing look on his face. You can see the artist slowly lock in over the first chapters, and the faces get more and more complex. And you're not gonna find more ugly faces, comedically ugly faces, and him going about business the way he does is really what sets off the comedic element of it, and that's what's going to hook people at first. Is it is just funny seeing him do all these absurd things, making these absurd deals. And he was an engineer before in Korea, or at least he was studying it in college. So he had a lot of experience building things and studying how things were built. And that's what he does to Lloyd Frontera's family's in debt, so he makes things as a way to try to get them out of it. First, it's a heating system that he has to threaten people into, but when they see that it works, they line up for it, and that's when his reputation starts improving a bit. And he starts making the knights under his estate work the construction jobs because they had nothing else to do. And that's when you first hear his famous catchphrase, safety first. He always makes a point to say safety first because while he was going to college in Korea, he was a construction worker and people got hurt on the job a lot. And whenever that happens, the boss would always overlook it, try to pin the blame on someone or something else, and just never took responsibility. So Lloyd always makes a point of making sure workers are working in the safest possible conditions, and he always takes the most dangerous job. And because he's too shy to admit that he cares, he'll always just say the one who does the most dangerous work gets paid the most, and his whole goal in life is to just live in luxury and not have to work eventually. So the survival aspect is there, like it is with a lot of these kinds of things. But the main goal of Lloyd is just make money, get out of debt, because his family's in heavy debt, and just live a life doing nothing eventually. So, yes, the comedy is the hook, but it doesn't take too long to see that there's a deeper side to everything that's going on here. Lloyd's life on Earth is not just glossed over. It's a very crucial part of the story. Like a lot of the Sekai, it's like you're in another world and you're just like cool, and there's almost no relevance to what things were like for you on Earth in your previous life. And I always hate that, because that if you live most of your life in one place, that those experiences are going to come into play for where you're at and what you're doing currently. And for Lloyd, that's very much the case. He had a very unfortunate life on Earth. His parents were dead. He was by himself, and he had to work in dangerous conditions and try to keep up at school in the meantime. That's never glossed over or anything. It's always very relevant to the plot, and Lloyd often remembers his life as Kim Suho and always tries to make sure that all the mistakes that he made and witnessed don't repeat themselves over here. He tries very hard to make sure that he does things in a good way. He's always got this like really funny you're going to eventually give in to my terms and sign my contract thing going on. But he always does do it for the betterment of the people. And he doesn't have to. And it's stated later that, yeah, there was a lot of shortcuts Lloyd could have taken, but because he saw a lot of shortcuts to get taken and the consequences that led to before, he actually make sure that whatever he does, construction wise or anything else, he does it as best as he can. He never does anything half heartedly. He's always in it full force. And yeah, he's just a great guy who gets things done while being oddly sadistic as well. I've really never seen a character like Lloyd before, and I don't think I'll ever will see one like him again. He, like, I don't know what the author was smoking when he wrote this guy up, but man, he is one of the most unique and well written main characters or just characters in general I've ever seen. And him just trying to rectify his previous mistakes, looking back on his life and trying to do things better in this new world is a lot of what you see at first, and that's great. But for me, the first big emotional hook that got to me and like made me see part of myself in Lloyd was when he was undertaking a really big project that he didn't have a lot of the knowledge for. So he was trying to make concrete, right? But he wasn't quite sure how to make this certain type of concrete because he'd never done that before. A lot of things he does at first are things that he actually did in Korea as Kim Suho. Like he built the heating system that is his first project. But this concrete, he's at a loss for it, and he spends a lot of sleepless nights mixing all these things together to try to find a solution. And that's when his summons, yes, he has a variety of summons. It's part of the system's power and the reputation points he gets with people he can use to summon creatures when he gets a certain amount. Those summons get really attached to Lloyd and they want to hang out with him while he's busy. But, he's tired, he's stressed, and because of that, without thinking, he yells at them to get away. And the instant he sees their like shocked and saddened faces, he has a flashback to a dog he had. The dog was the last member of his family that was around because, like I said, his parents died. But because Lloyd was busy a lot as a student, as a construction worker, he never he didn't spend as much time with his dog as he would have liked to. So when his dog passed, he it shows him at the dog's like funeral, I guess. He had a funeral for the dog, and it shows him like apologizing in front of the dog's picture, saying like, I'm sorry I didn't spend more time with you. And he thinks back to that moment and he drops everything and he goes for a walk with his summons, and he says sorry. And then the system gives him notification that says um your summons now think of you as a part of their family rather than just their boss. And that was just such a sweet moment. As someone who's lost several dogs myself, I very much get the feeling of, man, I wish I spent more time with them. And man, no matter how much time you do spend with them, that's always the thought you're going to have. It's never going to be enough. Not just with dogs, with any loved ones, any pets, any family, friends. And that's like, reading that made me cry, honestly. And that's when I first really felt a emotional connection to the story. And it really only gets deeper from there, while still remaining really funny too, which is why it's so impressive. It never loses the comedy aspect to it. In fact, it only gets funnier throughout the story. But it also develops its characters, makes them have emotional moments, improves their relationships with each other, all in such a satisfying and meaningful way that really makes you care. And that's just so impressive. I've never seen something go the route this has, and they've done it in such a cool and deep way. And it honestly is just so incredibly well written. And it really just it hits you out of nowhere sometimes too, cuz like it's it's a comedy. The main genre it is a comedy, but you see all these other aspects of it, and it's just like this could really be anything else, and would do just as well. It could have been just solely a comedy and it still would have been good because it is just that funny. But man, it just pushes itself to the next level by adding in all these other elements. Lloyd is such a great, well thought out character because, yeah, he has a lot of highs when he comes to the world, right? He makes it doesn't take him too long to clear his family's debt. He starts making a lot of money. He starts getting all these big projects. But he doesn't just have your standard isekai, I can do anything that I want now. He has his lows, and like some of them are really bad. He tries to run away from a fight that could kill countless people, but it's not on his estate. So his excuse is, it's not my problem. But he later comes back and risks his life and almost dies trying to save those people. He has there's a time bleh, there's a time when he holds himself up in his room because of how depressed he is and he doesn't eat for days. And it's not just there to be there either. Like you feel his lows. You can very clearly see and feel why he's depressed, why he's happy, what's going on. It he's I cannot praise Lloyd as a character enough. He is just truly spectacular just by himself. And the rest of the story and the rest of the characters are really good too. Like, it's honestly, this right here is something special that, like, you'll never see something like this again. That's honestly the kind of story it is. It's like lightning in a bottle. It's not gonna happen twice. No matter how many things I say about Lloyd, though, I'll never be able to truly praise him enough. So I'm going to move on from that now, and I want to talk about the original main character. Before Kim Suho became Lloyd, Javier. Javier was bullied by the original Lloyd throughout his entire childhood. He was taken in by Lloyd's father because he was starving on the streets, and he's a very talented swordsman. And in the original novel that Kim Suho read, he has a very tragic journey of losing everyone he cares about, but becoming stronger in the process. And he has like the potential to rival like pretty much the gods or the equivalent of gods around. So, yeah, the only reason he sticks around Lloyd as his bodyguard is because Lloyd's father saved him from starving to death. And he has a very intense hatred for Lloyd, or at least like an intense dislike. He doesn't like express this hatred because another important part of his character is like he is like the righteous knight. I need to save everyone and do my duty kind of guy. So he'll stick around Lloyd and like he won't just actively berate him until a bit later because as their dynamic evolves, it's obviously like a relationship that needs a lot of repairing, and neither of them actively do it, which is the cool thing because it doesn't take long for Javier to be like Lloyd's oddly different, and he actually does end up realizing this isn't Lloyd at all. This is just someone else. Before that actually like becomes a relevant to other characters and what's currently happening, he realizes it pretty fast. So he does have a pretty much hatred for the original Lloyd, and that rubs off on Lloyd in the present. But what as Javier sees what Lloyd is doing with how he succeeds with construction projects that makes people's lives better, with how he sacrifices himself for the sake of others, and how hard he works to make things come true, he starts to slowly think better of him. But like then the comedy comes into play, and Lloyd is like making the most devilish face he can in order to scare someone to sign a contract, and Javier instantly just starts questioning him again. And they also have like a really funny dynamic where they try to sabotage each other at every turn just for the love of the game. And there's this running gag where Lloyd is supposed to be like the ugliest guy around. His default face, mind you, is actually like he's actually a fairly good looking guy, but because of all the expressions that he makes, he's very infamously ugly. And so whenever someone is insulting his face, Javier just has like the most child innocent smile he possibly can. It's just so funny. Not to mention he'll like actively try to get people to insult Lloyd. There's even moments when he shows like actual pity for him. Like Javier gets love letters on the daily pretty much because of how good looking of a guy he is. He's canonically like the hottest guy around. And when he finds out Lloyd never has gotten a single love letter throughout his life, he just looks at him with such a look of pity. And yeah, so they have a really good comedic duo thing going on, but their relationship also gets deeper over time as well. Like whenever Javier starts unlocking more of his powers, it's because Lloyd's in danger, and Javier starts to really respect Lloyd for what he's done, and he serves him not because of an obligation to the guy who saved his life, but because he really wants to protect Lloyd and see his wishes through. And seeing him reach that place is just really satisfying to see because it's not random, it doesn't happen overnight. They slowly start like bickering more, supporting each other more, and like really becoming brothers, best friends. And it's just one of the best friendship dynamics I've ever seen. And it's so satisfying to see. I really can't stress enough just how many things this story does so right, so well. Anyways, Javier also eventually starts adapting to how Lloyd operates. So he starts partaking in and even devising some scams, quote unquote scams himself. And wow, seeing just the chaotic duo they become is hilarious. And just seeing how desperately they care about each other. Like they face their fair amount of life or death situations in terms of like, the original plot had a lot of bad things happen, and Lloyd, because Javier is his knight and because of how influential he starts becoming, directly gets involved in a lot of those. And seeing how desperately they try to protect each other is just so sweet, man. Like these are two guys who genuinely just care about each other from the bottom of their hearts, and you just love to see just like well written male friendship like that. It's not something you see that often, but when you do, it's amazing, and I love to see it. And like I said before, there's even a hint of romance as well. Granted, for like the first half of the story, it's not there, and Lloyd doesn't meet his love interest until a bit later, which I don't really have a problem with because when he does meet her, it's not like an instant like, oh, they're gonna end up together. Like you can make the guess, sure, but it's not something that is perfectly laid out and just shown to you. So seeing like their dynamic slowly develop, and she's not like with Lloyd the entirety of the series, right? She doesn't show up in every arc. She's not around for every chapter, but she is consistently meeting up with him every once in a while. And I talked about Lloyd being sadistic. He's sadistic around like everyone but her, which is it's a really funny dynamic they have going on because he tries to BS his way into anything or out of anything, and she just instantly knows, and she'll play along with his gimmicks and just directly call him out on it. And she actually falls for him first, and he, because of how drilled into him it's been about how he's ugly and has a crappy personality, he just is incredibly dense when it comes to her. It's very apparent to everyone else that she is very much in love with this guy, and Javier realizes it too. There's moments when Javier and Lloyd are standing next to each other talking to someone. Whenever Lloyd does or says something, Javier will just keep having these, like, he'll look at Lloyd, he'll look back at the person, he'll look back at Lloyd, and the face he makes becomes more and more strained, like he can't believe what's going on, and him realizing that there's a girl who's in love with Lloyd. He starts making those faces, and he is genuinely, like, shocked. Like, it's just so, it's so funny. It's hard to describe how funny it is, because, man, it's like, you really need context for a lot of the humor here, but just like seeing the pure shock on Javier's face and him like realizing that there's actually someone who would fall for Lloyd is just pure gold. Also, Javier does have a love interest too. She doesn't show up as often, and never in as big of a way. She doesn't have much in the way of dialogue, to be honest. But whenever you see her, it's always like, ah, there she is again. It's just nice to see her back for whatever she's doing. But the romance is a big part of the story in the later parts, and it is a consistent thing, and it's also done really well. And Lloyd and his love interest, it does show them getting together, and it's very satisfying. Like, it's just good romance. It's a good, well written romance part of the story. That's just like, once again, it doesn't have to be there, but the fact that it's there and it's done well is just so cool. And one more thing, real quick, is the final boss of the story. Which, yes, there's like a final boss, final threat. He's hinted at very early on as a joke, that he's passed up as a joke, and it's really funny that it's not that far into the story that he's mentioned, and yeah, that just turns out to be the final boss. But now that I've said that, if you actually do go and read it, you'll probably figure out who it is. But like, yeah, that's not just a joke. That is for real, the final boss that they face. It's just funny they advertise him up front as a joke. That said, the final fight and the overall conclusion to the story is very well done and very satisfying. Seeing how all the all the things Lloyd does have a cause and effect that lead up to this one moment, and how that both benefits and doesn't benefit him, is really nice to see. It's everything that Lloyd has done has had an overall importance and effect on the world, and that comes into play in the final fight. And the final fight itself is really cool. Lloyd and Javier, like, man, they they are absolute units. Yes, Lloyd himself becomes very overpowered, and like I said earlier, Javier has the potential of like a god, and he very much shows that off. And that said, the story ends on a really nice note where Lloyd had a friend in his life as Kim Soo Ho. He only had one friend, and his friend is where like he got a lot of his facial expressions from. And that friend told him that he always thought he was like someone from another world, like someone who was forced to come here, and because he's in a place that he's not meant to be, all the powers and potential that he should have been stripped from him. And he goes on to say that whenever he first started trying to work hard at something, he could never quite do it the way he'd like to. So when he moved on to something else, he felt like he was quitting at first, but then he realized that the new place he was in, his new environment, is where he felt like he belonged. And that's when he really started being able to work hard like he wanted to and be able to do the things that he wanted to. So he tells Lloyd that maybe people who aren't as successful as they'd like to be, or can't find the motivation to do the things they want to do, or just feel out of place, maybe they just haven't found their own world yet. Maybe the reason that Lloyd was able to really spread his wings and reach his true potential in this new world that he's in is because that was just the world where he ultimately belonged. And that's just such a cool message because it really ties the whole isekai thing all together. And yeah, Lloyd does have conflict in regards to his place in this new world. He wonders if he deserves to be there because whenever he thinks back on his life in Korea, he was always this timid guy who struggled to find confidence in himself. But when he's here, when he's in this new world, he's able to really feel like himself and do the things he wants to do. And as someone who, like, I myself have always felt out of place with where I am, the people I'm with, you know? I've never really felt like I belonged anywhere. So hearing that maybe I just haven't found my world yet is just, it's inspiring, you know? It's just something that I read that and I was just like, wow, that hits, man. A lot of things in this story really hit, and it really is just such a comedic but emotional masterpiece as well. And of course, that said, this is a god tier show. There's really no room for arguments there, and I don't really have complaints for this one either. It really is just like, I don't think there can possibly be a better comedy unless you just like pure comedy, I guess. But even that, like I said, this is pure comedy that just has such good emotional depth as well too. But it never stops being comedy. And for that, it's a god tier. It simply is. Now that said, for the second part of the tier list, there's two girls I want to put on the second part of this tier list. One is Lloyd's love interest. Her name is Alicia, and she's going in S tier because she really is just that great. And there's another character that really doesn't show up till like the probably like the final quarter of the story, but she's like the only other consistent female character besides like Lloyd's mom, I guess. But like I'm not averse to putting Lloyd's mom on the list, but she just doesn't show up enough or have enough good moments for me to put her on there. So instead, I'm going to do Artanis, and she is going in A tier because she's really cool. And had, if she was like there earlier, then I could see her making her way up to S tier as well. Honestly, but yeah, that's my list. And man, the Ray Estate Developer is just like so incredibly peak. Honestly, go read it. It's over. Obviously, I talked about the final boss, the final fight. Yeah, it's over. But there's like extra chapters coming out, like the Untold Stories, I think they're called. And those have actually been really good too. They're really funny. And the one that's currently coming out is like dropping some extra lore that ties it into like some of the author's other works, which I've heard that the author's other works aren't as good. Like they're kind of more the standard manhwa stuff, like nothing special. But like the fact that he ties them in together in and of itself is a cool detail to have among all of his works. And I'll probably check out his other stuff at some point, not immediately, but yeah. Um my next video is also going to be a manhwa because I reread both of these recently, and I originally knew the title as Villains Are Destined to Die, but it's also called Death is the Only Ending for the Villainess. And man, I'm really just throwing things in God tier lately, but I'll try to watch or read something that's not as good sometime soon, just so the other tiers get used. Because man, I guess I'm spoiling the result for the next one. It's going in God's tier. Man, I can't start talking about it because I need to end the video. But like, it might be better than this is, honestly, just for how amazing Penelope is as a character. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here. Uh, so yeah, my first two videos both got over 200 views, and I've gained a few subscribers from both. So yeah, thank you for being here, for sticking around. And to anyone who's new, feel free to join the rest. It's always nice to see the numbers go up. Not that I expect this one to do quite as well as like, Demon Slayer and Chainsaw Man, the most mainstream things. Mon was not as popular as a whole. But yeah, if you're here, thank you, and bye.